welcome back to another science fair lesson. For this week, we are going to be going over your procedure and experiment setup. For your opener, which should be in your notes packet, I need you to answer, where have you heard the word procedure before? What do you think it is? Go ahead and pause the video here while you answer. Your objective for today is I can write a procedure and prepare a data collection method for my experiment. For your directions today, we are going to be writing a procedure and creating a data table for your experiment. We will also go over some directions and examples, and then you will have work time. Let's start with procedure. A procedure is a set of directions for an experiment, kind of like the directions in a recipe. A good procedure has clear numbered steps. It also includes steps for all trials of the experiment and steps for collecting data. Even if you picked the same testable question as another group, your procedures might look different depending on how you chose to run the experiment. If you are working with a group, your procedure should be the same as your group members. Unfortunately, I cannot give an example for how to write a procedure because yours are going to be very much tailored to how you are choosing to set up the experiment, how many group members you have, everything like that. But I did include some helpful hints in your packet to get you started on writing those procedures. Your data table is where we can really go through some examples together. In order to create your data table, you first need to identify your independent and dependent variables. These two categories will help you decide what goes where on your data table. These definitions are also both in your notes packet. Your independent variable is the variable that you have control over in the experiment. The dependent variable is the variable that changes depending on the outcome of the experiment. So the dependent variable is usually what you end up recording as well. Let's go over an example. For this one, I'm using the testable question, does the type of liquid given to a plant affect its growth? The independent variable in this case is types of liquid, and the dependent variable is how much the plant grows. So both of your variables should be somewhere in your testable question to kind of give you a hint of where to start. If I was doing this experiment, I would design a procedure where I was adding different types of liquid to each plant and then measuring the growth of the plant each day. If you have plants, just as a side note, you could measure growth based off of roots sprouting out of the seed. You don't need to see them poking out of the dirt. So that's an easy way to test growth in a shorter time period. If I was doing that experiment, this is what my data table would look like based on the procedure that I designed. So my table has a title. It says liquid versus plant growth off to the side. And here I have my independent variable listed. These are the liquids that I'm using as well as the unit that says how much I am adding. So I am doing 2 ounces per day of water, 2 ounces per day of lemon lime soda, and 2 ounces per day of apple juice to test my 3 different liquids. I then have space to write in how much plant growth I see on the 2nd day after planting, the 4th day after planting, and the 6th day after planting. You could obviously add more columns if you chose to, but I chose 3 just so that you could see what I was doing. The other thing that's important to notice is when you are doing your variables, for your independent variable, you want to make sure there is as little variation as possible other than the differences that you are trying to look at. So even though I have 3 different liquids that I'm using, I am making sure to do the same amount of each liquid. If I change the amount, then that's another variable that I'm working with, and I won't be able to see if my growth was dependent on the type of liquid or the amount of liquid that I was using. So you really want to have only one thing that you are changing between your 3 different trials, or however many trials you are doing. At this point, go ahead and move so that you're with your group members so you can start writing your procedure and creating your data table. Make sure everyone writes in their own packet. Here's some reminders for work time, and this screen can stay up while you're working if you just pause the video. Make sure you include all steps in your procedure. Figure out your dependent and independent variable before designing your data table, and make sure you have units for anything that need to be measured. Go ahead and pause the video here and start your work time. Before you are done with class for the day, here's some reminders for what you need to bring to your next class. The first thing you need is a finished procedure. The second thing you need is a data table that is ready to be filled in. And the third thing is a plan for completing your experiment. You will find planning space at the bottom of your packet if you didn't see it already. Make sure all of these items are turned in according to your teacher's directions. If you are buying your own supplies, make sure they are all purchased for next week to conduct your experiment. You will need to be ready to start your experiment 1 week from today. This is really, really important to make sure that you don't get behind. The experiment is usually the hardest thing to get done because most of it needs to be done independently. So you need to make sure that you're prepared to start 1 week from today. That's it for this lesson, and I'll see you next time.